Just waiting on people to join. Welcome. Getting ready to start my second live stream. Hope everybody's doing okay. Happy holidays if you enjoy the holiday. If you don't enjoy the holiday, that's even better. Perfectly fine. Either way. We'll get started here in just a second. Alright, welcome to the channel again. It's Nubia Kemetic Facts. I am Basta Rakim. Uja. Uja, welcome. Welcome. It's my second live stream, and I just want to start off by introducing and just giving homage and paying homage to the ancestors. I want to start off with Dr. Yosef Ben Yokinen. Major influence in African American studies, amazing literature, and he also influenced a lot of other teachers, master teachers, who have preceded him. Dr. Clark as well, Ashrai Mary Rakwesi, Asa Hilliard and the Asa Hilliard Restoration Projects, Anthony Browder, Dr. Muada Ashby, and his wife Karen Sebajah Ashby. I want to say dua to all the ancestors, known and unknown. Also, dua to the gods and goddesses, known and unknown. Amen. So we're going to get into this lesson today. And it involves the kingdoms of Nubia. Okay, so we know about the kingdoms of Nubia, but we don't really go into detail about them because Nubia has been kind of hidden. The discoveries and artifacts have been hidden, and in some cases they have been destroyed by governmental powers, by weather, by neglect. And so I want to dive into Nubia and give Nubia its flowers so that we can understand as well its relationship to Kemet and how the identity actually was. Because there's a concerted effort to take Nubia out of Egypt, and there's a concerted effort as well to take Africa out of Egypt out of Africa. So we have the sort of same thing going on. They want to separate Nubia and Kemet so bad, but it has been several hundred years, and Nubia just keeps showing itself, and it keeps coming up out of the sand. Like Baba Ashra Kwesi says, every time they kick over a rock in Africa, they find one of us. So Nubia is a perfect example of that. And so I want to dive into Nubia and kind of uncover some of the things and the new archaeological discoveries that have been happening as of late that kind of shed light on this topic of Nubia and Kemet and the origins of such. Okay, so I want to start just by saying that, we commonly refer to Egyptian, or what we commonly refer to as Egyptian is actually Nile Valley civilization. Okay, what does that mean? It means that we've been misnomering the civilization, and we've been calling it Egyptian, which is, it's not even an African word, as we know that's a Greek interpretation, and of Hikapata, or the temple at Memphis. And so we have to kind of really ask ourselves, if that wasn't the right word, then what was the right word? And we know that Kemet is a better term for that, and it means land of the black, or black soil, or black people. Okay, and that's how they describe themselves, because we can kind of go off of that. So, and if they were talking about it being the black land, how far did that extend? Was it just the delta? Did it go back a little bit further than that? How far did it go? We're going to explore all those ideas today. So just like all of Africa, in the Nile Valley, there are many chiefdoms. This is how we help describe what Kemet is and what Nubia is. But there's many chiefdoms that comprise the whole of an empire. And it's not like you see it in Western or Eastern nations, contemporary nations. It was that way so that cultures could thrive. All the different cultures that they had in their varying degrees. So you see this in other cultures, how they express themselves, like the Ming Dynasty and in China, and all the different dynasties that they had that comprised what China is. The same thing when you go to Europe and you see the Vandals, you see the Vikings, you see, the Slavs, you see Romans, you see Greeks, but they all comprise what is Europe, okay? So we don't get the same questions when we go to look at their history and we say, okay, where these people were a little bit darker, and they spoke this language, and that means, okay, well, they weren't the same people. No, we don't look at that and say that they were different races. We look at them and say that they came up together. So it's important that we look at Kemet and we look at Africa in the same way. So the big questions that I want to answer and ask and answer on this live go like this. So the big questions is who came first, because this is going to help us figure out the identity. Who copied from who? That's major. They want to say that Nubia never contributed anything. At first, they didn't even acknowledge Nubia as a black anything. They didn't even acknowledge Nubia whatsoever as far as who they were. They would just say that they're slaves and that's it, even though they built an amazing civilization, and which goes far past what anybody who's in a subservient position would be able to do. They still say that. So we want to figure out who copied from who. All right, and we also want to figure out why did they fight so much. If they were neighbors, they fought all the time. If they were family, they fought all the time. Both things we need to figure out why they did those things. Okay, so this is what we'll dive into in just a second. So in pre-colonial Africa, and African tribes and empires fought one another primarily due to competition. Okay, this competition was over vital resources like land, water, grazing areas for their cattle, trade routes, and sometimes to expand their territory. Consolidating power was a big reason why they fought. Okay, so when we talk about consolidating power, I think about Narmer. Okay, I think about Minis, and I think about how he united Upper and Lower Kemet, and that's massive. That is a big reason to fight. Okay, because trying to get people together is tough, and that's exactly how tough it is. And they also wanted to defend, against potential threats, and that's the reason why they would fight. If one culture was encroaching in a negative way on another, it's time to go. It's time to fight. And these conflicts, they were fueled by social and political dynamics between the different groups. All right, and this isn't just Kemet and Nubia. Okay, they were fighting the Libyans. They were fighting people to the east. Okay, they were fighting people in Mauritania. They were fighting people even further south, past the Nubians, and people even to the northwest of them. So many chiefdoms were around, and some of them have been lost to us. Some of them we do hear about. We hear little bits and tidbits about them in stele and on temples and things like that. When you see the scene, the smiting scene, the famous smiting scene, where the king is holding the enemy by the hair, there are lots of them. All right, we don't know exactly who these people are, but we do know through text and through archaeological information that these areas were called the Nine Bows. All right, and the Nine Bows represented the enemies of Kemet, and they also represented the neighbors of Kemet. Okay, just like you have in Africa today. If you watch a documentary on native or indigenous African communities, you'll see that there are a lot of other African chiefdoms around, and they fight all the time. They just do. Okay, some of them they mock fight. All right, like the Zulu. Some of them they actually do fight. Some of them hold festivals in honor of fights that they did have that are mock fights, and they'll just hit each other with with makeshift swords and things like that. So this honors the culture. That is a part of the culture. Okay, and I believe it keeps everybody strong. some of the negative things that have been said um, about the culture that we need to take into consideration too, I'll bring up here. Um, some people will say they fought because culturally they never rose, or there was never a rising above a tribal group identity. All right. So and and they never grew to a national group identity. All right. And that's major, because we get to ask now why, and do they need to unify in that way? I think they do personally, but let's go on. Um, uh, the way that Africa does it, though, there can only be one ruler. There can only be one. Okay, and this king would elevate the population to an area that, for some reason, they feel like they can't do with multiple rulers. All right, so that is a huge theme in ancient Kemet, and it's an ongoing theme in ancient Kemet, and it's something that we see very regularly. So, and they believe that if you if we did not do this, if that was not done, then there would be calamity. There would, the civilization would not prosper. All right, there had to be one king who was worthy enough and inspirational enough to push everybody into Ma'at. All right, and that's just how it was done. Call them hard headed. So otherwise, there was collapse. All right. And I often wonder if there was a military advantage to them staying separated like they were. And I look and I see sometimes different cultures would come in and encroach, and they would fight, they would enslave, they would pillage, they would wreak havoc on the land, and they would do that in one area. Okay, so say they did that in low and upper Kemet, and they took over the delta. All right, and they thought, and they gave it their all, and they thought that that's it. We took the Black Land, or we took Kemet, we took Egypt. When in fact that was only that one area there, and that was only that one chiefdom. And then they can call on their group here, their group to the south. They can call on the Nubians. They can call on the Magi. They can call on any one of the nine bows, and they would come in and bail them out. So I do see some advantages there. And maybe that's how they stayed in the civilization for so long. We don't know that. So they were like brothers and sisters in that way, kind of fighting over these age-old questions that we were asking earlier: who started first, and who was the oldest, and who who won so many battles, and these are things that the civilizations fought over. Call it camaraderie. But what I want to divulge here is that Egypt is really a broader civilization whose history is intertwined. Everyone's history is intertwined in that way, and it has been since the time of antiquity. And they came up together. So the people and the customs are the same, and each of them, along with many others, the nine bows in the area, contributed to the culture. And I believe too, you do have Asiatics, and you do have Afro-Asiatics, and you have Hittite, you have Libyan, you have people from all around who are contributing to the culture here. And I don't believe that it was just black people. I believe that all cultures have ideas that come in from the outside, and that's what sparks that level of civilization that brings them up to a point of stability. So and we'll go back over this again, but the exclusion of Nubia at certain points in history is what caused the fighting. All right, this is a hypothesis that I'm coming up with now. So they were more than happy to be included and fight for Egypt at any point that they were called on, and they were happy to build with them, even restore them in many cases. All right, we got Taharka, and we have the 25th dynasty kings, as well as Nubians who are married in to the Egyptian royal families, who are at the top, who are kicking people out, like Amos and Amos Nefertari. You have plenty of kings who were royalty, who were Nubian, and represented for their culture. All right. But to exclude them from access to the gods and the memory of their ancestors was blasphemy in all of Africa. All right. This was a part of the culture that many people were passionate about. This is what made kings, and this is why they fought so valiantly. Sorry, and yeah, to exclude Nubia or any one of the nine bows out of that is gonna definitely start a fight. Okay, and in that way, you're trying to cut off the roots from inner Africa. Okay, Egypt trying to cut off their roots from inner Africa is something that Nubia has to step in and kind of be the bigger brother about, or the bigger sister about, and say, hey, no, all right, this isn't why we're here. This is not the right path. We're getting off of Ma'at, and this is why all these things are happening. Now we're totally fine to be over back here chilling and doing our thing. We're not in competition with you, but when you start to do things like that, we're gonna have to step in. All right. So, and to answer the question earlier as well about national and group identity, to add to it, I'll say cultures are just now getting their stuff together. Okay. The advent of chattel and colonial slavery not only halted African history, but African progress as a whole. So China, Russia, the Middle East, they're just now getting their stuff together. Okay? The peoples who've had major damage, including genocide to their people and colonization by other cultures, they're behind. They're far behind. Okay? Because that's how fragile civilization is. Civilization can get knocked off kilter, and it can take hundreds of years for it to get back. And to get to a point where civilization is thriving, it takes hundreds and thousands of years of doing the right thing. All right, so that's how we get to that point. And if you don't, then you're gonna be behind. So it's kind of funny, but it's kind of true at the same time. But this is what CPT actually is. All right, in the Black community, we call it Colored People's Time, or CPT. And because people are always saying, well, why are we so late? Why are we late? Why are we late? We're not 5 minutes late. Okay, we're not an hour late. We're hundreds of years late. All right, because of what happened during this time. And people know that. You know, the conquerors and the colonizers, they know this. All right, it's just that Black people don't know this. So concerted efforts are happening now to get us back on track. And this is one of them, identifying these markers from Nubia and from Kemet. Okay, let's move on here. So the kingdoms of Nubia. I got my cursor working now, so I hope you guys can see that. And I had a lot of fun designing these slides for you guys. We want to talk about today. We're going to talk about Kerma. We're going to talk about Meroe. We're going to talk about Kush. We're going to dive into a little bit of Napata, and Kuduru and Nuri. Okay, so these are areas in Nubia, but there are three major civilizations that happened in Nubia over the span of time, from when Kemet first started all the way to 350 AD. Okay, we're going to talk about the Kastul incense burner. We're going to talk about, hopefully we can get into the jewelry, and we can get into the Meroitic script, and why it's not been deciphered. Yeah, that's major. And I can tell you right now, Meroitic script, you don't find a lot of these. Okay, it's massive. I'm not gonna even spoil it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Kush. So why was Nubia hidden? Why has Nubia been hidden from modern academia? And modern Egyptology is just now coming to grips with the fact that Nubia was a great civilization in its own right, and not just a redheaded stepchild of Egypt. Okay, why was Nubia hidden from modern academia, and how was it hidden from modern academia? We're gonna in the next few slides visit Aswan and talk about the dam that was put up and strategically placed, so that I believe is strategically placed where all of Nubia and its inhabitants basically get covered up. All right, the inhabitants have to move out. All the artifacts that they were finding, they're now covered up by this huge lake, Lake Nasser, and yeah, who knows what all was down there. Well, we do know people who know what was down there, and we'll get to that in just a second. There are tons of other reasons why Nubia has to be hidden from Kemet, from Egypt, and why those things cannot connect, even though there's so much cultural continuity between the two cultures. Okay, if you look at the faces, okay, and you really look at the characteristics, you look at the body shape, the phenotype, you look at the stone and the type of stone that is made from, that makes these up. I believe this is basalt, which is very hard and very, very tough to work with. And the kings of Kush, the way they were depicted. Now these statues that we have right here, which were found in Napata, were gilded in gold, so around their necks, and some of them had sashes around their necks, and then the cap crown were all gilded in gold, but it's all been taken off. It's all been taken off. There's an Egyptologist named George Reisner who excavated initially in Kerma and discovered these statues. Now, I don't know what George Reisner did or who came after him, but there are many explorers who came and looted in ancient Kush. And after they looted these, the gold was taken off and sold to places like Germany, and are still there. And thankfully, the areas are now a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Doing that, they preserve the honor of the kings that are there now. But if you look at the structures and you look at these statues, the way that they stand, the shape, the only difference I can really see is that their necks are very thick. They're very thick, okay, people. When you look at the Nuba people, which who we believe are a lot of, there's archaeological evidence that states that the Nubia people are from the ancient Cushitic archers, all right, in the army that was down there. They look just like that if you really look at them. All right, so when you look at the depictions of the Nubian archers that are in the Cairo Museum, they're replicas, the small replicas of them. This is who they're depicting, and they're also depicting the Magi. All right, so these are similar peoples. All right, but the culture is the same. When you look at the ram's head right here in front, okay, the cap crowns are a little bit different, but you have the double uraeus representing upper and lower Kemet. All right, so the double uraeus is massive. It's a massive teaching. All right, of the Sefek Bara or the Kundalini, rising vitality, which is a thing that I believe was practiced up and down Kemet, and it's how you became worthy. It's how you became king. So this was a thing that royalty practiced in particular. And if you look at the statues, you can tell that these men are very upright. All right, and they're very regal. Outside of being regal, they are very established. They're very old peoples, and you can tell in the statues. So the artists and the artisans were not beginners, okay? They have been doing this for a long, very, very long time. Modern Egyptologists would say that, okay, this is the time where Kemet colonized Nubia, and they sent over crafts or skilled workers to come and do the statues for them, and artisans to get them writing and get them established. All right. While that I believe is true, I definitely understand that Nubia had their own artists and they had their own culture because of how they did what they did. It was the same, but it was different. They always added something that was indistinct or distinctively their own, and that's how we know that Kush was not just following and not just a result, of Kemet, but they were innovators. These people pushed the culture forward. Now, whether it was at the exact same time or whether it was later, that is to be discussed, and we're going to get into that in this next slide. But these are some of the reasons why modern academia has to hide Kush, because the prestige that's there is not something that you can fake or that you can imitate and do it. Otherwise, everybody else surrounding them would have done the same thing. This is an original thing that's coming from them. All right, this is a passion, that's coming from them, and you can tell in the art. I wish we had enough time to get into the pottery. I wish we had enough time to get into all the art, but I guess we can save that for another live stream, or we can save it for another post. Like we said earlier, in all of Africa, in the Nile Valley, there are many chiefdoms that comprise the whole of what an empire is, okay? And it's not a Western or Eastern nation, although it wasn't noted in those early empires. It was this way in Kemet so that the vibrant cultures could thrive in all their varying degrees. There were so many different states in Kemet. There were 42 nomes in Kemet, or towns, so to speak. And they reverberated the culture. And each and every one of them, I believe, came up with something new or different that they were doing as they were exposed to this blanketed culture. Okay? Everybody knew about the hieroglyphs. All right? It was probably one of the first writing systems that we've experienced. And once it spread, it probably spread like wildfire. It probably spread like the creation of the wheel. Okay? So anybody who speaks is speaking this language, is writing and understanding these symbols. All right, is eating this food, is growing this food and experiencing this sort of agriculture and this sort of climate. And yeah, it's a well known thing. Okay, so and as we stated earlier, these particular statues of the kings from Kush were found in Napata. All right, so Napata is huge, and we want to talk about Napata and get down to um, the bottom of what things were found there. And the Kastul incense burner was one of the artifacts that was found in Kastul, and it's a very controversial artifact because of the time that it indicates. All right, so the incense burner. Let's go. We'll get into that in just a second. I want to talk real quick about Kemet versus Nubia. Who came first? All right. I love this image right here. I believe that might be Taharka there, and there's a priest, and his name is Ka-Eper, and he was an Egyptian scribe, so from 2500 BC. And this is a famous wooden statue at the Cairo Museum, and it's famous for it looks very real. All right, what they call it, verisimilitude, and a lot of scholars and a lot of Arab scholars believe that this is the likeness of an Arab person, but I really look and I see people like Taharka, and I see how thick they are, and I see the neck, and I see, the nose, and I see the lips still, and I see the short hair, and I think about this piece right here. So I always thought when I saw him, man, he looks different. He doesn't look like the average native Egyptian, and when I look at these Ethiopian kings, as they were called by the Greeks, I can see resemblance there, and I hope you can too. So, another concept I want to introduce is something that I've always struggled with trying to understand is how is what they say upper and lower Kemet in between here and here. Okay. And so Memphis was considered upper Kemet and Thebes was considered lower Kemet. Now, this is what we've been fed for since the beginning of Egyptology, and I don't know how they can say that is absolutely true, because they were always expanding their borders, and we have account from people like Herodotus. This is an early explorer, a Greek explorer too, who was there on the ground and speaking to people at the time and gives word. And this is one thing that he says is that Kemet was originally populated around Thebes, and it gradually made its way into the Delta region where Lower Kemet is situated now. Okay, so people moved down into the Delta at a later time. We also have archaeological evidence that backs this up. We'll get into this in the next slide. Okay, including the Kastul incense burner. All right, so I drew on this map right here just so you can kind of see what I mean with this hypothesis, kind of putting that out there. This is where they're saying Upper Kemet is, and this is where they're saying Lower Kemet is. All right, around Aswan is where Lower Kemet is. And remember, it goes up south, okay? So that's why it's called Lower Kemet. That's why that's called Upper Kemet, even though it's in the north, seemingly. All right, so Nubia is right here. All right, this is all Nubia. And they're saying that it ends right here at the first cataract, which would make sense geographically. All right, because you can sail that far, but then you got to get out of your boat, and then you come over into Nubia. So it makes sense that you would stop right here, and we don't go no further. Okay, unless we're really going far. Okay, but I believe that Lower Kemet was here, and Upper Kemet was here in Nubia. All right, I believe that Upper Kemet slid down a little bit or expanded basically their borders. That doesn't mean that they stopped being in Thebes. It doesn't mean that they stopped being in Thebes. They went everywhere. But Nubia was Lower Kemet. And what's Egypt now was Upper Kemet. And when the lands were unified by Narmer, I believe these were the two lands that were unified. Okay? That major civilization, those two major civilizations that were there, Nubia and Kemet, were the major two lands that were there. All right? There's nothing that really draws a line in between what they're saying now is Lower Kemet, Upper Kemet, and Lower Kemet. There's nothing right here, besides Thebes. But there are no significant temples, tombs, monuments, pyramids, geographical barriers that are in between here and here. All right. It would make sense though that Aswan and that first cataract would cut off Upper Kemet from Lower Kemet. That makes sense to me. All right. And the culture is a little bit different down here. All right. It's just like when you go from I'm in the United States, and I live in the center, right in the center, and what they call the Midwest. I'm in Oklahoma. All right. And Oklahoma is like right here. All right. And there's just space in between here and then the next state, which is Texas. And Texas is massive. And people down there are kind of unruly, and and they cut their hair funny, and and they talk out the side of their mouth, But we're the same. We know we're the same, There is a rivalry that is between us, all right? If you ever heard of Oklahoma or OU, Oklahoma University, and Texas A&M, Texas anything, all right? There's a major rivalry that's there, all right? So this is where these sort of assumptions come from, all right? Because it still happens today, and we still see this each and every time I go down there, or each and every time one of them comes up here. Do we know we're family? Yes, we do. All right, but there are just certain things that separate us, and the same could be said for Nubia and for Egypt, if we understand it in this way. All right. Let's move on. So, when answering the question, who came first? These are some of the archaeological and new findings that we have, and astrological findings that we have now that are kind of answering some of these questions for us. Like I said, every time you kick over a rock in Africa, especially Nubia, you find something new about us, and that's massive. Okay, so what we have over here is the Atbai Desert. Let me get these notes. And we have monolithic structures, astrological structures. We have rock paintings, rock carvings from the Neolithic period in Sudan. All right. So this is 8,000 years BC to 600 BC. All right. That is a major time. And it goes past what they say are the years for ancient Kemet, which are being pushed back on a daily. They're pushing back the times that they're saying it was 3,400, 3,500, and now they're talking about there's a dynasty that preceded the first dynasty, and they're calling it Dynasty Zero, which is really okay. This is what they're doing. And I believe that they're doing this because if they really added on more time, that would mess up the whole chronology that they have going on, that correlates with the Bible, that correlates with all of their other literature. So they can no way admonish or give away that time. So they come up with things like Dynasty Zero, which is I mean, that should let you know. That should definitely let you know something's up, okay? Because there's no such thing as zero time. So these megaliths and these rock carvings, these early rock carvings, which are early hieroglyphics. All right, this is where the hieroglyphs come from. It's from tomb rock art carvings and paintings. All right, and they're found in Nubia in the Neolithic period. This is the Sudanese Eastern Desert, or the Atbai, sorry. It's still largely unexplored from the point of view of rock carvings and surveys. As part of the Atbai survey project's fieldwork program, surveys conducted in 2018 and 2019 identified new rock art sites in the in the deserts around Gebel Nahaganat. And that's this area right over here. Right here. Okay. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you see these yellow and black dots. This is Gebel Nahaganat, sorry. So findings includes a large tableau of a boat fleet along with numerous sites yielding faunal rock art and surface remains. So fauna and flora, animals and plants, things of this nature. So this is the boat that we're talking about here, and this is an artistic rendering, and this is approximately where it is found. I'm gonna leave. You have to give me a second, but I'm gonna leave a description, or in the description, the links to the sites where you can go and you can find this for yourself. Okay. But yeah, these rock carvings right here are massive findings. For when we talk about chronology, it literally is changing the time and changing the tide of, when it was discovered, how old Egypt actually is, how old Nubia is, and that is massive. Okay, so this sort of thing they don't want people to know. Okay, they really don't. But at the same time, it makes Kemet that much more interesting. It makes Nubia that much more interesting. So that's why you find people and Egyptologists, and now you have Nubiologists who are coming out and they have something to do. They're doing research. Archaeology is at an all-time high. We have statistically we have way more Egyptologists than we've had in the profession ever before. And geology, archaeology, these areas of study are becoming flooded with students and with scholars, as they should be. This is an exciting time for the world, and if we're not looking over here for what's happening in our lives now, this we might miss something very, very, very important. So it is crucial that we look towards these ancient monoliths to see in the past to see what's happening in the future. Anyway, when we go up and we look at that boat, wow, I can show you so many pictures and so many reliefs in Egypt that have this exact scene. And the reason I want to point this out is because when we look at these, and we'll see on the next slide, we see exactly where the hieroglyphs come from. And I don't know anyone else who's pointed this out. There could very well be tons of people who have pointed it out. But whenever I look at them, all I see is hieroglyphs. Now, these paintings that are on and these carvings, the carvings did have paint, all right, at one point, and you can still find traces of paint that are cut into the stone. All right, now not all of them are cut into stone. Some of them are painted. Some of them are just etched. But you can see the evolution, just like with the pyramids. You can see the evolution of the hieroglyphs or the written word on these early rock paintings. So that is wonderful, magnificent, as far as the process of building a civilization goes. All right, so let's get over into this next slide. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I wanted to show you these mummy burials too. And in these mummy burials, you'll see that this is how the A group Nubians bury their dead, and it's significant because this is what is this, 3,100 years? I believe. I need to check on that. Yeah, so a very long time ago, preceding, this is pre-dynastic, okay? But you find the same burials in classical Egypt in the new period in Egypt, not in Nubia, in Egypt, and at a place called Tumbo. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the archaeologists who are discovering these sites. Okay, let's go on. We forgot to talk about the megalithic structure. These are astrological and astronomical observatory, outdoor open air observatory that are found. And these are megaliths that were found 2,000 years before Stonehenge. All right. And yeah, I believe this is in Naphtaliya in southern Sudan, sorry. And yeah, pre-dynastic, of course, and it, like I said, all this changes the dates, and it really puts in perspective, and kind of answers the question, who was first? All right, now were these Egyptians? Were they Nubians? That's where it begins to get a little bit mixed up, and you gotta see how these questions are being answered and providing more information for us. This is more Neolithic Nubian / Egyptian art. So, and it shows the progression of the Paleolithic rock art from 3100 BC all the way to the Egyptian wall art from the New Kingdom. All right, and these are actually Kushites. All right, even though they're this color, I know you think they're dark black all the time. They're not. All right, these are still Kushites. All right, these are still people from Nubia who are bringing giraffes in. And then this is a Paleolithic, all right, giraffe that's looking almost the same as this one, all right. So, yeah, link in the description as well for these early rock paintings. And again, we're seeing the early remnants of the cow cult associated with the goddess Hathor, and early pastoralists, because a lot of Africans are, and they lead their cows to different grazing fields, and this is how they sustain themselves. Even people like the Hammer tribe still do that today. Tribes in East Africa are still the same. They still do this. Okay, so That just attests to the culture that has been there, and it's ingrained in them. That's why they still do it. All right, so this art right here, you can see how it was transliterated into late kingdom art. I believe this is the tomb of Maharpra. All right, depicting these cows right here, and the Apis cult that came later, and obviously came out of the Paleolithic rock art. Okay. You have a depiction of Nubians on the wall, and I love this because you really can see how the 2D art and how long that went on for. Okay, the 2D art was massive amongst all cultures, and especially in Africa, and it started way in the Neolithic era, along with Nakata culture. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with these stela, the palettes, and early um, art from the Fayum, early Nakata art, the women with their arms up and back, the dancing with the thick hips. You know, sorry, this it's kind of cut off right here, but these are available to see in the Egyptian Museum, and they are beautiful works of art and old, super old, 3100 BCE, and this is contemporaneous with the flowering of Egypt. All right, but it's Nubian. Okay, don't miss that, because they want to tell us that Nubia got everything from Kemet, and this is kind of ridiculous because how do they do how do they copy from such an early time? All right, I don't believe that, because if you have been around with them for that long, okay, if you've been around somebody for that long, I don't think that it's I don't think that it's something that is not inherent within you. At some point, you got to embody it. And for us, we know we can learn something and we can embody it within a year. All right. Now we're talking about thousands and thousands of years, 8,000 years. Come on now. All right. So that's a bogus statement when they go to and try to say that Nubia got everything from Kemet. And although some of those things are true, but after you've been doing that for so long, all right, after you've been doing that for so long, and now you're pushing the culture forward, it's yours. It's yours. So we finally get to the Castile incense burner. Like I said earlier, this is another one of those archaeological findings that changed the whole shape. It changed the aesthetic of Egypt and Nubia, and it got people's eyebrows up about who was the real starter, who started the civilization. So the incense burner was incised from the earliest records of Nubian kings. It's a mixture of clay minerals from Castile, Egyptian Nubia, A group Nubians from 3100 BC. So Bruce Williams, amazing archaeologist, he argued in 1987 that his discovery of the Castile incense burner advanced no claim of the Nubian origin or genesis of the pharaonic monarchy, but that the archaeological data shows Nubian linkages and influence in helping to fashion for pharaonic civilization, including detailed excavations of the burial place. Now, what did he say there? He said they did influence. He didn't. They didn't influence them, but they did at the same time. All right, so this is just basic. Um, I don't even want to put that on him because I actually do like Bruce Williams, but you gotta at some point be able to admit your findings, what you found. All right, sometimes our psychological makeup won't allow us to do that. Um, and But when he says that the incense burner advances no claim of a Nubian origin or genesis, okay, I get that. It's not saying that it started, and the civilization started in Egypt, but they definitely had a huge influence and they had a play, at the beginning, which is what I was just saying. All right, so at the beginning, if you're trying to say we copied off of them, but from the beginning, we had the exact same, understanding of the culture. Okay, so and your viewpoint is skewed because of your psychological makeup and what you've been fed and how you culturally believe and behave. All right, so that happened with a lot of early Egyptologists, and we'll get into that in a second as well. But what Bruce is saying here is that the dates of the origin between Nubians and Egyptians is irrelevant when buttressed up next to the span of time that preceded them. All right. Moreover, the ideas and symbols, the wisdom and civilizations became more specific as time drew nearer to the present day. All right. On another note, would you ask the same question in another continental or geographical situation? For example, who came first, the Greeks or the Romans? All right. The answer to that is the Greeks came 1,000 years before the Romans, just like the Nubians and Egyptians, and they were both white and had or fairer skin, paler skin, whatever you want to, however you want to call that, and they had awesome, amazing cultures and civilizations alongside each other. All right, but no one questions that. Um, that they are not exact. All right, they're not exactly the same phenotype, um, and not skin tone, not the same skin tone. All right, no one questions that. Okay, but they do when it comes to Nubia and when it comes to Kemet. No, they were not the exact same phenotype. They were not the exact same color. All right, but that doesn't mean that they're not the same people. Okay, did the Greeks and Romans fight? Everyone fights. Okay, that doesn't mean that they are all right. They're different races. It just means they had a disagreement. Okay, and I would argue that the Greeks and Romans were family as well. All right, just like the Nubians and Egyptians treated each other. This is how civilizations come about. All right, but based on historical evidence, both ancient Greeks and Romans likely had a range of skin tones within the Mediterranean spectrum. Not as vast as the African ones because we have many. All right, there are tons of phenotypes and skin tones. So we have to take that into consideration. But there are no significant differences between the two populations, meaning um, they would have generally had similar skin tones with variations depending on the sun exposure and gender norms, where men were often depicted with darker skin tones due to them working outside, and women with paler skin tones due to them staying indoors. The concept of race as we understand it today did not exist in their society, so classifying them as having a single skin tone is inaccurate. All right, it's inaccurate for them, and it's inaccurate for the Africans as well. All right, because if they didn't have a concept of skin tone or race, then neither then because they were on their own land. All right, so neither did the Africans, neither did the Kemetians, neither did the Nubians. Okay, we can move on from here. So, African continental identity. Let me pull up my notes real quick. Please just give me 1 second on this subject. Okay, so we're going to go back in the notes to the beginning where I said we were going to cover this again. But I just wanted to introduce you to the concept earlier, but this is the actual slide that goes with that. And I wanted you to see how the whole of Africa, okay, from West Africa to East Africa, from Timbuktu to Kemet to Dukigel, and civilizations that they're still finding right now. You'll see they're all kind of shaped the same. A lot of times you'll see like a very large enclosure around a city and around an area or a town or a town center. And you would find that all over Africa. All right, from Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Central African Republic, from Sudan to the Niger, from Chadic, Eritrea, all the way to Punt, Monomatapa, Great Zimbabwe, great in Namibia. You see this everywhere. All right, this is cultural continuity at its finest. Now, that should let you know how information spread within Africa and how it spread in these fertile lands. It was not always the desert in these areas. Okay? So, and we know this because in Nubia, there were so many different animals that were traded. You see them in the tribute scenes, and you see them finding their way into Egypt and the Delta from inner Africa. So they moved and traded like better than they do today. I'll tell you that. Okay, so these civilizations worked with each other. They traded ideas from time immemorial up into the present time. And this is how the ideas shaped Africa. Now, it all came to a halt, all right, once they reached their peak. And just like civilizations do, they kind of meet a decline once they get to that peak. Um, and and you have colonization, you have slavery that just put a nail in the coffin for Africa as far as civilization goes. So since then, it's been back on the rise, and I believe that it'll be the next world power in the near future. So, but like I was saying earlier, they were like brothers and sisters. Okay, these civilizations, wherever, they're like brothers and sisters to each other, big brothers and little brothers and moms and dads in some cases. Some civilizations are a lot older and well more put together, and some are younger within the continent. And this is how they treat each other. All right. If one gets out of place and doesn't know his place, then you get put back in your place. All right. So that's what happens. If one culture needs help, then the bigger sister or the bigger mother can absorb another culture into their society. All right. And that's how you can expand yours, and that's how we can grow and unite. And that is the African way of uniting. So, and in this way, they all contribute to the culture. All right, through that same fighting, through that same expansion, they all contribute to the same culture, and the culture grows. Now, Africa is such a massive continent, though, that 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 work that a lot of other cultures do, it takes a lot more to do that on the African continent. You have to have a lot more people. You have to have a certain level of understanding, and you have to have a certain level of peace. And And I would beg that it is a massive, like when you look at China. All right, if China got off its rocker, it would take a long time for China to get back because it's so big. Just imagine if they occupied the entire continent and it wasn't mountainous and it wasn't, uninhabited in certain areas. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at here when we look at the whole of Africa and we shape its identity. Okay, you see many different skin tones, you see many different phenotypes, but the culture is the same and it is very old. All right. And they fight all over. That does not mean that they're of different races. They have light skinned people, they have dark skinned people. That does not mean they're of different races. You have to understand that. Now, it is a bit different and nowadays in northern Africa, where you have the Arab conquest that came along and took over the areas. A lot of those countries now are actually Arab fields. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pre-colonial Africa here. Okay, amazing civilizations. And like I said earlier, um, these cultures are just now getting back to themselves. All right, and these African cultures are on CP time because of the colonization that happened. So if you're watching this and you have a different culture and you've heard about CP time, CPT amongst the black community, now you know why we're late. All right, it has little to do with what's going on in that society and a lot more to do with what happened way back here. All right, so give them a break. We can go on now. So, like I said, we're coming up to the part about the Aswan Dam now, and in this slide, I want to make you aware of some of the efforts that have been pursued and installed to help separate Nubia from Kemet. And one of those things I believe was the Aswan Dam. And the Aswan Dam, there were two. There was one attempt in 1902, and then now we have the new Aswan High Dam that was built. What was that? When did they finish that? I'll get that to you in just a second. But the Aswan Dam not only uprooted the people, 100 to 120,000 people. Okay, and very sad to watch those people be uprooted from their livelihood, from their ancestral homes, and get kicked out. And get kicked out from their ancestral home. And yeah, it's very sad to see the cultures mix and take advantage of the Nubians in those areas, and assimilate through intermarriage with the women to lighten up the culture, kind of on the low, but it was definitely a covert thing, but it was definitely something that they intended to do, along with, and when I say they, I mean the people who came in from the Levant and colonized that area later. So this is the result of it. These Nubians were kicked off of their homeland, and some of them with no place to go were just simply pushed out, walking with their kids, with their belongings. Now there was an effort to try to place them in what you and I would probably call like government homes, and it was thousands of miles away. It wasn't thousands of miles away, but it was a considerable distance away from where they were. And when we talk about Nubians, when you go to Egypt and you see the area where all the houses are that have the domes on them along the Nile, and they're all white and they're painted beautifully, the women are the ones who paint those houses and they build those houses with their bare hands, literally. And imagine being pushed out of those areas just because of your skin, just because of who you are. All right, just because of the history that you hold, and this is massive. So not only did it kick out 100 to 120,000 of the inhabitants, but it buried their cultural treasures. Yes, it buried all their cultural treasures, y'all. So imagine all the things that have been found in Egypt, and they're still finding stuff in Egypt. They haven't even started, and they never started getting. Well, they have started, but they're just scratching the surface of what's awaiting them, what was awaiting them under the Nubian sand. But they covered all that with the building of the Aswan Dam, and now with Lake Nasser, the whole of Nubia is underneath it. So we have to look at this, y'all. We have to look at this and see what they're doing. We have to see that this is an effort to demolish a whole people in their history, and we have to say, why would you do that? If what we're saying isn't true, why would you do that? It's very sad that we still have in our lives and we still have in our lifetime um, to see this. We still have to see this. This is really wild, because if we are moving towards a more civilized world, if we're moving towards a more advanced world, and we still don't have a basic level of respect for our neighbors and for our people, then where are we going? We're still lying about things that happened in the very beginning for the stupidest reasons. So the Aswan Dam was built in 1960, and I believe that had help from Russia, from NATO, to build this. And yeah, they could have built it anywhere. And there's also talk about building another one. Yeah, a little bit more towards the delta, but and that would destroy a lot of Egyptian temples and a lot of Egyptian artwork that was put there. And I'm sure there's another way, but maybe there's not. Maybe maybe there's not. Let's move on from here. So before before that dam was built, there's a Egyptologist by the name of Dr. Nicholas Millet, who was working in the area and found a bunch of Nubian artifacts. And he was literally working there, and I was reading something that said that his feet were getting wet because of the dam, because it's flooding, and he found Meroitic tablets, and these Meroitic tablets were kind of like the Rosetta Stone between Nubia and Kemet. This is what he said, and before they were able, okay, so but he found the stela, but it was broken. All right, and before he could go back and find the rest of the shards that would complete it, which he knew they were there, um, he was unable to do it because the dam literally flooded in the area the very next day. All right. Now that's massive because we still don't have a Meroitic script deciphered. Nobody knows what it means. And now it could be lost forever because of the dam. And there were people who were putting together money and resources to discover these things at the time. And right then they were cut off. Now, if we had Meroitic script deciphered, then we would know for sure. We would know, okay, when the Nubian, we would hear from the horse's mouth. Literally, we would hear from the Nubians their side of the story, and not just the conflated idea from the egotistical Egyptian kings, and their writers' perspectives. Okay, of course they're gonna say this about the Nubians when they're fighting them. They're gonna talk really bad about them. But what did the Nubians say about them? We may never know because of these sorts of things. So, Dr. Nicholas Millett, look him up. You gotta find this guy, okay? Yeah. So, but one thing I can say about the Nubians were that they were people who had participated in the world of their time. So, they participated and they were involved with campaigns all the way over into Syria, with King Urbanipal, and even traded as far away as Greece, because we know this because we find those artifacts in their tombs, all right, all the way in Nubia. And we also know that I believe it was Amani Shaketo who was the queen, who actually fought against the Romans and beat them. Okay, so they were not victims, all right. They were not sitting on the sidelines while Egypt did all of their things and their glorious things. No, they were not. They protected Egypt in a lot of cases, and if they had interests, or if they wanted to explore, or if they wanted to do anything, they acted on it. This is the people that you're dealing with. Okay, so that is something to be proud of if you're from Sudan. All right, if you have, if even if you're not of the culture, all right, and you've had a certain stereotype about the people that come from there, understand that this is a powerful civilization, all right, and it is coming to light now, their their contributions. And before we get into this, I just want to say that the civilizations after the Neolithic period, as we know, and from Kastul, um, they go in order from Kerma, which was 2500 to 1500 BC. And like I said earlier, it kind of coincides with Roman and Greek history. How, not at the same time, but how the Romans were kind of like 1,000 years after the Greeks. Okay, so that's kind of generally what we hear from the Egyptologists and what we hear from the research when we go to look it up. But in light of new information, these dates are all subject to change. All of the dates are all subject to change, and there's no way to chronologically get them perfect. All right, because there's so much things that we don't know. All right, so and then you have Nuri, you have Kuru. Nuri is about 670 to 310. You have Napata, which is 664 to 315 BC. And then you have Meroe, which is 350 BC to 350 AD. All right, so the Nubians were there the entire time. They were there the entire time. Okay, so um, to put them in the shadow, okay, of ancient Egypt for that long is crazy. That's like saying I'm your little brother, right? But I've always just been in your shadow, and I didn't know anything on my own. I never did anything on my own, and we're 50 years old now. I'm 50, you're 60. You know, it's ridiculous. I'm a little brother, but I have my own experiences. All right, I have my own opinion, and I stick by you because I love you. And to say it any other way is fighting words because I didn't have to be here. All right. So that's how we have to understand the relationship between these cultures. Okay. What we're looking at here is a picture of James Henry Breasted and George Andrew Reisner on the right here, which I believe are amazing Egyptologists. I really do. Reisner on his own came up with the whole categorization for how to order um, your findings. All right. When you go to Egyptology, when you go to dig up anything, there's a certain order, there's a process that you follow, and Reisner's responsible for that. Okay, so imagine being that guy. All right, imagine being that guy and the one who is responsible for how we all look at and view discoveries. So that's pretty cool. Um, and then James Henry Breasted is responsible for a lot of the transliterations and how we have such knowledge on the hieroglyphs and these ancient sites. Okay, so massive information coming from these two. However, their leading archaeology in the proficient categorization. I'm sorry, I'm so tired, you guys. I've been up all day, but we're gonna get through this. All right. These early Egyptologists were racist in their view of Nubian findings, and stating that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that there could be no way that Africans built the civilizations in Nubia, and as a result, the artifacts must be Egyptian. All right. I I I kind of thought this, but I found this online during research, and it kind of like confirmed exactly what I was thinking. So I thought it was really powerful that I actually found this, and 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 I thought, wow, like that's really significant because I've always thought that a lot of the Egyptian artwork was Nubian, just because they don't find that much stuff in Nubia, even though it was just as vast. So what happened to all of this stuff? Now we know that a lot of explorers, especially Italian explorers, came and I think his name is Fellini, who came and like actually blew up the tops of the pyramids. Um, Giuseppe, that's his name, blew up the tops of the pyramids and yeah, in search of the gold from Amani Shiketo's tomb. And this is pretty crazy. Um, because if it was yours, why would you do that? All right. Um, yeah. So let me see if I can get a picture of Amani Shiketo's tomb right here. It keeps disappearing. Oh, it's not gonna let me. But there's a tiny picture of it right there. And so yeah, and that was a drawing of it. Um, as you can see, everything was intact, and she had so much gold. She had so many artifacts, so much jewelry in her tomb, and it was taken, and it was magnificent, intricately done, the highest and finest quality. You have to remember that the Nubians, the, okay, I believe the word Nubian came from the Kemetic word for gold. That's why they call them that. So the Nuba people, the golden people, are the people where the gold is. There are tons of gold mines in these areas and shafts where they still find gold today. All right, they still work gold today. But when we look at Egypt and we talk about trade and when we talk about um, occupation, we talk about colonization, this is what they were after. All right. So they colonized Nubia and expanded into Nubia to exploit them for their gold. All right. And Nubians have been working gold for so long. That's why they stayed down there. that's why they were. That's why they didn't want to come up to the delta. All right. Plus, we don't swim. Why we want to be by the water? All right. So this is what the Nubians are saying. They coveted their own land, and they love their own land. They love the gold they came out of. They love the people that they were, and 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 to be goldsmith and to work gold was something that they became very proficient at. So I believe that because of this, certain things became traded in between them, including the gold, but also the knowledge of how to work the gold. All right. So that fine work is attributed to Kemet or Egypt, but I believe that it started in Nubia. Okay. Otherwise, they wouldn't be down there trying to take their gold. But this is unfortunate about Breasted and Reisner, because they did so much great work in Kemet. But to turn around and say that about the Nubians, I mean, come on, man, we gotta do better. All right, and to say that the Nubians, as a result of the artifacts found, they must be Egyptians should let you know. And I've said this in a past video that I believe that a lot of the artifacts that they're saying are Egyptian are actually Nubian. Now, the things that were found in Nubia that were taken by Giuseppe were taken to Germany and are still there, which I believe they should be returned to Nubia. And yeah, whether you bought it or not, it should be returned. It's and it should be preserved. Like this is somebody's. This is a whole culture's history that you have, and that's not right. All right, so that brings us to one of the last slides. And this one's about Shabaka and, of course, the 25th dynasty. I say this to later because everybody already knows about the 25th dynasty kings. Let me get out of the way here. All right. And but Shabaka, along with his royal family, Pie, Pianke, Tantamani, um, Kashta, the royal wives, the royal wife of Amun, his family. Okay, they came up to Kemet. All right, and this is one of the occasions where Nubia had to be the bigger brother, and had to come down and say, "All right, we told you where you were going with this, and you didn't listen to us, and now we got to come up here and we got to do it right, and we got to reestablish Ma'at, and it's actually our pleasure." So they did, and they did it very well. So one of the things I want to speak about, though, that I haven't heard a lot of Egyptologists speak about on this topic is how the Egyptians welcomed them like they were the rightful heirs to the throne. This is 714 to 525 BC. So they welcomed them because Shabaka was organizing the military. He was organizing the religious structures. He was organizing the magic. He was organizing pyramid building. He was organizing the building of and the adding on to temples and the restoring of ancient texts. Now, how does a foreign king come in and do all of that? That's a major question. I believe Dr. Clark says it the best. He said nobody came into Kemet, no foreigners came into Kemet and added to Kemet. Everybody who came into Africa and Kemet took away, and that's particularly true with everybody who came onto the throne, except for the Nubians. All right, so the Nubians came along and they restored Ma'at. They restored Egypt. Okay, and we know this because Shabaka, he added on to the temple at Karnak. He added on to the temple at Medina Habu. He also reestablished the creation stela, the famous creation stela, which is called the Shabaka stone. I believe that one's in the British Museum, and reestablished the philosophy, because this is where it all went wrong. All right, he restored Kemet to his former glory. He created campaigns that built onto the temple at Karnak. He unified Egypt under Nubian rule. All right, and when I say Nubian rule, I mean Kemetic civilization, Nile Valley civilization, because this was the thing that people knew all the way up and down the Nile. I believe, the Magi could have came and done the same thing, or Aksum could have came and done the same thing. Monomotapa could have came and done the same thing. All right, so that's important to understand. So Egyptian religious practices he restored from tradition. The cult of Amun he restored. He established Memphis at the capital city, and he was preserving ancient Egyptian texts by commissioning the creation of the Shabaka stone. Like I said, a key document recording Memphite theology. All right, which is Ptah, Khonsu, and Mut, I believe. Yeah, all right. So that Holy Trinity that's there, he's reestablishing that, and we know Ptah is the creator God, the one that says, "Let there be light." So he's the one who's putting forth that knowledge again. We have to go back to the source. He also engaged in significant building projects throughout Egypt, especially in Thebes, where he erected statues and temples dedicated to the gods. That was Nubia. All right. And if you want to say that Nubia lived in Egypt's shadow, then you better be glad that they were there. All right. Because although Egypt still fell after the 25th and 26th dynasty, you have Pharaoh Samtik. Was one of the last reigning native kings, but they inspired that last golden walk in the sun, as Dr. Clark says, and really pushed Egypt to be the best that it could for that time, and say, we're done getting pushed around, and we're gonna come up and do our thing. So dua to Pharaoh, to the ancestors, Shabaka, and all of the royal family from Nubia coming up and helping out Kemet. This is something that you don't see from foreign rulers. You don't see people coming in and doing that. Okay, they might come in and get a statue made of themselves. They might pay lip service, to the rest of the kings, but they were after vanity. We know this because there were no contributions, okay, and there was no acknowledgement by the native inhabitants. All right, and in a lot of cases, those kings who were on the throne, they had native Egyptians doing and priests, doing carvings and doing work for them. But the priests knew that they didn't know what they were actually writing. They didn't understand hieroglyphic script. So a lot of times they would just leave the cartouches bare. All right, and they still just did the work, probably so they didn't die. But yes, Shabaka was different. They paid homage to Shabaka. They were probably glad to see Shabaka and his family. All right, and this is known because of the cooperation. All right, that happened during his reign. Okay, so I believe this is the last slide, and it's called Kemet United. All right, doesn't that sound beautiful? Kemet United. I wish we had a Kemet United now. So African tribes and empires fought one another primarily due to competition over vital resources, land, water, grazing areas, trade routes, and sometimes to expand their territory, consolidate power, or defend against potential threats. These conflicts often fueled by social and political dynamics between different groups. As we stated earlier, and I told you we were going to revisit that, but it's a common theme throughout, and we have to keep it in mind, all right? Because these are major questions that are asked, almost derogatory questions that are asked by modern Egyptologists to kind of get you off the path, all right, of discovery when it comes to connecting ancient Kemet and Nubia. So what we commonly refer to as Egyptian or Nubian culture is simply Nile Valley culture. Again, I'm reiterating this because it is very important to understand. Its characteristics are as such. Just like all of Africa, in the Nile Valley, there are many chiefdoms that comprise the whole of the empire. It's not as contemporary Western or Eastern nations. It was this way so that their respective cultures could thrive in all of their varying degrees, given their territories and agricultural standings. Just as other cultures, they shared progress, learning, and cultural/spiritual ideas through trade and war. This ultimately elevated their civilization and way of life to a very high degree. All right, this is how civilizations are made. This is how it goes. So, yeah, massive, massive, massive teaching right here coming from Kemet. So I want to know what you guys think down in the comments. Please let me know what you think about those questions that were asked. Hopefully I answered the questions in a way that was enlightening, because they've always, and I'm asking the questions because they've always intrigued me. And trying to get down to the bottom of it, I finally had time today to do it. All right, so I did not, however, get into the other civilizations that were in Nubia. That time has been invading me, and right now it's past midnight right now, so I literally probably can't get into it too bad. I'm sure a lot of people are tired as well, so do me a favor, hit the likes up, rewatch the video. I am saving this video. You'll be able to see it after I get done. But in the next videos, I want to get into Kerma, which was the southern part of Nubia, or Upper Nubia, as they're calling it. I don't believe there was an Upper Nubia. But Kerma culture and the new civilizations that they're finding called Duki Gel, which has a really tricky kind of name, which is founded by the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, was occupied from 1450 to 400 AD. Yeah, so quite a long time. Duki Gel has been discovered in ruins though, but the foundations are still there, and it is a massive civilization. It's massive, okay? And we haven't even gotten into it. Okay? Yeah, the statues I showed you earlier of the Napatan kings, the Kushite kings. I wonder if it has it on there. Yeah, this one right here, you can see the gold that's gilded there. I don't know when they took this picture, but now when you look at the same statues, it's gone. The gold is gone when you look at the statues. Lo, I can't make this up, y'all. The gold is gone off of all of the statues now. Whereas it was fully gilded. You can see this went down. It was a leopard skin, fully gilded gold sash that went all the way down here. Is gone, y'all. What they did with it? What did they do with it? They didn't even. They won't even say. Where I found the picture, it even mentions that it was gilded in gold, but it does not say what happened to it. That is, uh, it's really wild, man. This Egyptological journey has exposed so much about people and about greed and yeah, it's wild. Another thing we're gonna get into. So please keep up with the channel. Turn the notification bell on for the next live or for the next um, video that I post, because we're going to be talking about tombos, all right, or tombo, and the pharaoh Simon, and a lot of us know the pharaoh Simon, and we have his bust, but we do not know that this is an ancient Nubian settlement that was in Egypt, okay, and at about the end of the New Kingdom period, 1300 BC. It was a colony with a temple in it. All right, remember where I was talking about the temple structures that have the this sort of almost like a gate fully around it, you know, and like you see in all these African cultures, they had that in Kemet all the time. Sometimes with a pyramid inside of it. All right, on large scales and on smaller scales. This was a smaller scale, so there were Nubians who were living there. It was a colony of Nubians that were living there during the end of the New Kingdom. Okay, and these were royal people. You can tell by their burials. They still had their own burials, and they still had their very own culture, even though they lived in Egypt. So these were not oppressed people. All right, they want to say that they were slaves on every account, but the findings are telling us no. The receipts are there. All right. It was discovered on the east bank of the Nile. I'm going to put the link in the description as well. With a cemetery and a viceroy of the king of Tutmosis III, and his name was Enebni. All right, I think his wife's name was Becky, which is like really cool. All right, so we're gonna get into that in the next videos to come. So please stay tuned on the channel. Tell somebody about the channel, and so we can get our likes up and our viewers up. This is a very new channel, so thank you for watching, of course. I'm gonna make sure I hit all my points, but I think I did, y'all. Yep. Yep. Okay, so again, I just want to say thank you to the ancestors. I want to thank you to the gods and goddesses for allowing me to even be here and sharing this with you today. Again, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Asa Hilliard III, Anthony Browder, Dr. Ashraf Mary Rakwesi, or Baba Ashraf Mary Rakwesi, Dr. Ashby, and Sebajah Ashby. Much ado. I hope you enjoy the video, and hit tap, y'all. Peace.